Portland is located on the traditional homelands of the Multnomah, Oregon City Tumwater, Watlala, Wasco, Cathlamet, Cowlitz, Clackamas, bands of Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Malala, and many other indigenous peoples, both recorded and unrecorded. The indigenous peoples of these lands were relocated to the Grand Ronde Reservation under the 1855 Willamette Valley Treaty and are now part of the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde. Despite displacement, the Grand Ronde people maintain a deep connection to their ancestral homelands and continue their cultural practices. Today, Portland's indigenous community includes people from over 380 tribes, both local and distant. PNCA respectfully offers this acknowledgement as a step towards recognition and repair, understanding that acknowledgement alone is not enough. I am so honored tonight to welcome visiting artist Christine Lauren Miller to PNCA. Christine is an incredible artist whose work reveals and provokes, excavating and shedding light on hidden histories of white supremacy and the commodification of Black bodies and lives. I wanted to share a quote from Christine from a recent interview in Bob magazine talking about her work. If we look at visibility as being something that's just optics with no energy in it, it's just surface level, not power. I've heard somewhere before that power and love should coexist, both in the same place. Love cannot exist without power, and power, done correctly, should not exist without love. I'm obsessed with Bell Hooks' All About Love, New Visions, in which she takes the definition of love from M. Scott Peck. Love is the will to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing one's own or another's spiritual growth. There's so much to unpack in that definition, but it makes me think about the word nurture as growth with care. Anything that grows needs energy, power to grow. If you just hang a Black Lives Matter sign, where is the power? What energy are you producing? It can't just stop there. If you've been to one of Christine's exhibition openings or collaborated with her on a project, or even just had the pleasure of meeting her, you know that Christine exudes a powerful energy of care, an aura of love. She has a really special way of bringing people together, sparking thoughtful conversations and connections, and fostering community. She embodies the artist as a creative community builder, a positive force for fostering both critical thought and critical connections. And now for the more formal. Christine Miller is a painter based in New York, New York. With a background in product development and extensive knowledge of the manufacturing process, her work focuses on the design intentionality of historical commercial products, literature, and advertisements that have been used to dehumanize African Americans. Her art centers around racial stereotypes and histories while simultaneously reframing cultural narratives, pointedly exploring how anti-Black propaganda and stereotypes permeate American life. Christine sources and recontextualizes figurines, advertisements, written material, and other ephemera that overtly and covertly create and maintain anti-Blackness. Despite the deeply violent and sinister nature of these objects and visuals, she often draws from those with an everyday quality. Once readily available tchotchkes, drugstore products, and popular magazines that add to the material's impact. Through her work, she confronts and challenges white supremacist definitions and illustrations of Blackness, as well as her own identity formation. In addition to her watercolor paintings, Christine also utilizes graphics and works in publications to further her visual storytelling. She has a background in fine art and geography from Hunter College, along with a degree in textile and surface design from the Fashion Institute of Technology. Christine's work has been shown in places such as the Portland Art Museum, the New York Times, Bomb Magazine, as well as various galleries, publications, and cultural institutions. She is currently an MFA student at Columbia University with a concentration in painting. Please join me in welcoming Christine Miller.
Hi, hello. It's always nice to hear your bio being said, so thank you so much. So it's funny, I kind of had my bio prepared, but again, born and raised in New York. Background in geography, fine art, and textile design. And it's funny, I have a friend, And she's like, you know, whenever you're just unbothered or like you don't feel like dealing with someone, you just make this like face. And when I saw this picture, I'm like, you know what? I've been making that face since the beginning of time. And just thinking about, you know, the ways that you evolve. And I remember being 16 in high school and calling my principal racist. And she was crying. She's like, I heard you was calling me racist. And I'm like, you are. And, you know, even going to my last employer and rallying other Black women who were being discriminated in the same organization, and letting these people know. So, you know, even being back is full circle. I'm born and raised in New York, but been in Portland for 7 years for a job that didn't work out. I thought I was going to climb the ladder, meet my husband there. And thankfully, those two things did not happen. And I'm very thankful for the life that I'm living. So, you know, full disclosure, some of the images that I do use could be very triggering and kind of harmful, but I use it to educate people. And yeah, let's get started. So first, I just want to talk about my collection. My work centers around history. It centers around harm of the Black body from mass-produced product and imagery. This specifically is something that I own called Darky Toothpaste. It was from Hawley and Hazel, and it was used into the 80s. And it was designed based off this minstrel performer, Al Jolston. And Colgate acquired the company in 1985 and changed it to Darlie. So, yeah, I first really started getting started with my work from trying to explore my own issues with colorism, and trying to like figure out just, you know, certain things within like this social landscape of the idea of Blackness being ugly and all these other things, and doing that through product. So I want to play a short clip from the Queen herself, Toni Morrison, to kind of set a foundation of everything.
To me, as he had said in one other place, he said, in a much quoted comment, he said, living with AIDS is easier than living with racism. It's a harder struggle against racism for me than it is against AIDS. What it meant to me is that there's no way for the rest of us to understand that daily encounter. Which brings me to my question to you. Do you still have that encounter? Do you, Toni Morrison, Pulitzer Prize winner, successful, honored in the halls of academe, etc., still have that encounter?
Yes, I do, Charlie, but let me tell you, that's the wrong question.
Okay, what's the right question?
How do you feel? Not you, Charlie Rose,
Right.
but don't you understand that the people who do this thing, who practice racism,
Right.
are bereft? There is something distorted about the psyche. It's a huge waste, and it's a corruption and a distortion. It's a profound neurosis that nobody examines for what it is. It feels crazy. It is crazy. And it has just as much of a deleterious effect on white people, and possibly equal, as it does Black people. I always knew that I had the moral high ground all my life. I always thought those people who said I couldn't come in the drugstore and I had to sit in these funny places, I couldn't go in the park.
You felt morally superior to them from day one.
And I thought they knew that I knew that they were inferior to me morally. I always thought that. And my parents always thought that.
You said your father was racist because he always felt like he was superior.
That's right. He always felt superior. And that was a form, you know, of defensive racism. But if the racist white person, I don't mean the person who is examining his consciousness and so on, doesn't understand that he or she is also a race, it's also constructed, it's also made, and it also has some kind of serviceability. But when you take it away, I take your race away, and there you are, all strung out, and all you got is your little self. And what is that? What are you without racism? Are you any good? Are you still strong? You're still smart. You still like yourself. I mean, these are the questions. It's part of it is, yes, the victim, how terrible it has been for black people.
But you don't like that.
I'm not a victim. I refuse to be one.
And the victim is the other person who is morally inferior and
That's a serious
has to hold
question.
on to
Of course.
racism
if you have to
somehow
hold,
for his or her own self-esteem and definition.
If you can only be tall because somebody's on their knees, then you have a serious problem. And my feeling is white people have a very, very serious problem. And they should start thinking about what they can do about it. Take me out of it.
Then give white people some free advice.
They're all in my books.
First off, how dare you ask Toni Morrison for free advice after that? But okay. But honestly, this clip has just really been carrying me for the past however long with every comment about DEI and this and that. And I'm just like, you know what? These people are deranged. Leave me out of it. And, you know, Toni Morrison has talked before about, in her book, Whiteness, Literary Imagination, Playing in the Darkness, of doing an examination not just of Black people who, I don't want to use the word, but were victims of this hatred, but also of the psyche of the plantation owner and the derangement of it all. So, you know, I first started my work from seeing this for a PBS documentary with David Pilgrim. And when I first saw blackface on the TV, I'm like, oh my God, like, what is this? And it was just so deranged. And, you know, just some history about blackface minstrel. It was really something that was popularized in the North from Irish, Scottish, and Jewish immigrants to align themselves with whiteness and Anglo-Saxon. And it was really to reinforce and settle fears of Black people and upward mobility and quote unquote being erased. This alligator bait, I clearly remember, and it just like really freaked me out. So I've had people before ask me like, well, why do you do this? And all these other things. And, you know, I used to call these products Black Americana, but as I'm growing, I'm like, this has nothing to do with Black people. This has to do with white imagination and why that these products have to exist and be created in the first place. So I think of my work also as satire. And I just really love this quote from Robert Colescott, who was an incredible painter. And his imagery is very graphic and just an incredible American satire painter. So I work a lot with the Aunt Jemima image. This was one of my first collectibles that I got here in Portland. So Aunt Jemima was actually first produced and performed from a Black minstrel performer, then copied from a white minstrel performer, in which the person who owned Pearl Mill Company saw and then wanted to create this image. So Aunt Jemima first debuted at the World Fair in Chicago in 1983, played by Nancy Green. And going back to the white imagination, so Nancy Green was born enslaved in Kentucky, but for this World Fair, they made it up like this plantation, and she's from Louisiana. She has this long, drawn-out accent, really to play into that stereotype of the mammy. So also part of my collection are salt shakers, and I had them photograph, you know, just these ready-mades and assembled these little shelves and different things with them. Sometimes I take the originals, make copies, and just kind of play around with it. So this one was a postcard, scanned it, and then ended up screen printing it on different acrylics. A collection of postcards. So this Pickaninny Freeze metal sign was made from Hendel's ice cream, and it was to advertise strawberry ice cream with chocolate chips. The cream of wheat. So this was actually a doll cutout that I found Ended up getting it framed and wanted it to be like in this like red hot coloring. So these postcards, one of the things I'm really interested is the language. I've seen it use different terms, stump language, cabin language, all these different things. I was reading Caste by Isabel Wilkerson, and she talked about in the movies how they presented this type of language to Black actors, and they actually had to learn how to speak in this language. But it was another way of reinforcement of buffoonery or trying to show like quote unquote Black people didn't have education or they talked a certain way, all another form of mockery. Also, what's interesting is that if you ever read slave narratives from the Freedmen's Project, they use this language kind of, and some people did have problems with it, but then also it was just like they wanted to keep it kind of the same, and it's not fully clear what the intention was, but yeah, you just see this type of language consistently. So back to Aunt Jemima. So I took this original cookie jar, and I worked with a fabricator to make these reproductions, which was at my solo show at the Portland Art Museum, and painted them red, black, and green. And that is the end of some of the collection. So next is Multiply. During 2020, I had a show opportunity at Oregon Contemporary, and I was working with the curator, and she was like, let's pull out all the things. And I'm like, I cannot see those things right now. But if you give me the chance to do something new, I would really appreciate it. So that's how Multiply was born. So Multiply is it's a project, a material design project using the Pan-African flag colors and using different materials in order to tell stories about being Black. So that one is hair maps. The other one, I forgot what I called it, to be honest, but just made a series of them. So these first started as a project called Red, Black, and Green, which I put on my Instagram every day for the month of March. I purposely was like, I love Black History Month. I'm not putting it up for Black History Month also. And just created engagement and talked about different stories. So I can't talk about the Pan-African flag without talking about Marcus Garvey. He was Jamaican born. So it first started from this song, a minstrel song, Every Race Has a Flag But the Coon. And if you think about just the time periods of emancipation of people who were enslaved and Independence Day, emancipation happened afterwards. There was even a woman who was enslaved who sued the government, and she ended up losing. And it was another way of trying to reinforce that Black people were not, quote unquote, looked at as people. So Marcus Garvey and his Universal Negro Improvement Association in 1914, which he organized, was the birth of what we know of Pan-Africanism and Black nationhood. So the Pan-African flag was born in 1920. There's so many different renditions, but from what we know, the most known is the red, black, and green. So red for the blood of the people, black for Black people, and green meaning land and seeds. So with this project, I was just playing around with different thoughts, and I really wanted to have fun with it. So I found this wool material, and I dyed it, and I made it into a flag, and just thinking about just our hair texture and beautiful locks. Denim days with Destiny's Child. It's so funny. I'm wearing a bandana now. That's hilarious. But this one was an ode to myself. I had like a bandana for like every color, wore it with every outfit. So I really wanted it to be fun and like just a mix of like personal stories and like larger stories. And then this was a snapshot from Oregon Contemporary. Making that grid took so long because, they're handmade and they're not like, in these perfect rectangles. But, it ended up really being beautiful. Ooh. So I had to, excuse me, sorry. I've been talking a lot. So I had to include this quote from Malcolm X. As we all know, Malcolm X has been really villainized. But Malcolm X was about love, and he was about Black nationhood and us and wanting things for us. So these are quotes from The Ballad of Bullitt in 1964, and these are some of his thoughts about Black nationalism. And I just really love this quote. We have to change our own minds. You can't change his mind about us. We've got to change our minds about each other. We have to see each other with new eyes. So after this, ended up having a solo show at One Grand Gallery, which was called Multiply. And if you haven't heard the term, multiply came from we don't die, we multiply. So I had 3 large Pan-African flags, all donned in the gallery with imagery of the Klan, of these ghost images, and just really wanted the flags to stand out. This is sturdy, which is leather. Each grommet was hand done, and it took a very long time. And then this is durable, which is tarp. So each flag represents me, my mom, and my dad. So that one is my dad. His nickname was Slim. And then that's sturdy, which is leather. And that represents my mother, because she always talks about this leather jacket she had. And, she might have been associated with the Panthers. She might have not. Who knows? The story is not clear, but, that one's dedicated to her. And that's me, durable, because of their love and because of, their sacrifices. They made me durable. So with these flags, I ended up making these woven labels, just a little kitschy. And then this is one of the final stages of Multiply. I do want to pick it up, but it's funny. I made 19 Pan-African flags, and I was going to open this shop in this big way, and then finish the flags, got them photographed, and then Juneteenth came, and it was just like, you know what, this is not the right way to do it, and I just shut down the website. So I'm still kind of playing around with these flags, and they're still here, but really proud of them, and just different materials and different stories with them. And then these are 2 of my favorite. And then each of them have different names. I made one specifically for bell hooks, 10 points, which is the one in the middle, number 2, made after the 10-point program for the Black Panthers. The one on the bottom, number 6, hair maps, and just thinking about just making these textures and textiles with different products from the beauty store and things that I grew up with. So it was a lot of play and a lot of experimentation. I wanted to call this one out. This one is called Rose. So prism rose, cotton rose, and corn rose. They're all for sale, but also putting this one out for being for sale because the proceeds would go to buying books for prisoners and buying All About Love. So if anyone is interested, please let me know. That also covers shipping and all the other things. And then those are 18 karat little charms. And then last but not least, did a collaboration with Mokata in Brooklyn, with a collaboration with Laura Gauthier and 2 incredible artists in Portland, Jocelyn Rice and Aaron Hankins. And those are living in Brooklyn. Let me see how I'm doing on time. I don't know if I'm going too fast or too slow. Okay, good. How's everyone doing? Deep breath, you're good? Okay. All right, so now the watermelons. I've been rocking with watermelons for a long time, and we still here. I redid my website, and I'm very proud. So that's the landing page. Please go check it out. So watermelons are one of the first cash crops that previously enslaved people sold in order to get commerce. There are stories about people who were enslaved and grew their own little watermelon patches in order to gain enough money and potentially buy their freedom or just have certain liberties in life. I wanted to read a quick excerpt from William Black. He's a historian who studies civil rights, who studies Civil War era histories, and he wrote an article of how watermelons became black, and he just really shapes it up really perfectly. So I just wanted to read it real quick. The racist watermelon trope became truly national in the late 19th century. With the end of Reconstruction, as both Northern and Southern whites felt more confident in white supremacy and less threatened by black citizenship, the watermelon came to serve a different political purpose. Instead of lamenting emancipation and assigning Reconstruction, it now legitimized the social orders of redemption and Jim Crow. The imagery was no longer of freed people running amok, but rather of content, childlike darkies. Depiction of black people growing or selling watermelons became rare, while depictions of them eating the fruit became ever more popular, suggesting African Americans were now in their proper place. White Americans bought sheet music with titles like "Gimme That Sweet Watermelon," "Watermelon Time in Dixieland," "There Ain't No Gwine to Be No Rhine," and "Plant a Watermelon on My Grave and Let the Juice Soak Through." They bought pot holders, paperweights, and salt and pepper shakers shaped like big-lipped, wide-mouthed, watermelon-eating blacks. They bought postcards like the ones of an old man carrying a watermelon in each arm and happening upon a stray chicken, to which he responds, Jesus, I buy these books with this language and I'm like, my God, I get dizzy every time. To which he responds, "This MD worst watermelon of my life." As on the antebellum plantation, the sight of African Americans eating watermelons reassured whites that the racial order was intact and that the worst pre-dissiment African Americans faced was an embarrassment of riches. So going back to the original collection, I remember I used to call them Black Americana objects, but as I'm like doing more research and history, it has nothing to do with Black people and it has everything to do with white fear. So yeah, these pictures were just everyday occurrences, again, to try and keep Black people in their place. There was reports of, or times of history of white people shaming Black people for growing watermelons because they looked at it as like the quote unquote easy fruit to grow. But they really wanted Black people to be sharecroppers and applauded Black people who decided to grow more cotton. So again, so many things in history, especially with this watermelon, that James Baldwin didn't want to be associated with it. Dr. King, Malcolm X, some of our powerful leaders were just so like, do not put that with me. I mean, and it still exists to this day. You see images of people putting watermelons with President Barack Obama. And then even in that Nazi MAGA rally of the joke about a Black person with a watermelon. So yeah, this trope is still very much so alive and well, and my work is to dispel those myths. This was just really interesting to me. So there was something called the World, let me read my notes, sorry. The World Fair in 1983 in Chicago, where there were different races and different nations represented. And they did not allow African Americans to show. And they were trying to act like African Americans had no sort of place within the conversation of innovation and contributions. So Ida B. Wells and Frederick Douglass actually took home with the Haitian Pavilion. And, there was generational differences. And they decided to go forward with a colored American Day to shine light to things for which African Americans contributed. So long story short, Ida B. Wells didn't want to do it because she knew the ways that the media portrayed Black people, and that Frederick Douglass was like, well, you know, we need to continue, we need to do this, we need to use this opportunity. So in the middle of this discord and them planning it, which they ended up doing, I don't know if it was someone on the planning committee or just someone being ridiculously racist, which I wouldn't be surprised, saying we can provide 2,000 watermelons, in which Ida B. Wells was like, absolutely not. But of course, even though the Colored American Day went really well, you know, this still got out, this information, and then it was still used for like minstrel shows and content, including this imagery, which they put as Darky's Day at the fair. You know, it's also interesting that later on, like Ida B. Wells was like, you know what, like Frederick Douglass was right and he killed it and had a great speech. And later on, there was a Friedman paper that came out and was like, you know, it wasn't that great. And then what happened to the 2,000 watermelons? And I'm just like, oh my God, you know, and it just made me think about how there's such a romanticizing of organization and revolution, sometimes with just different groups or with Black people back then. But reading this history and like showing that like people still had to come together or just had humanizing, you know, traits of not agreeing, it was just really refreshing to see. So yeah, I first started painting these for my show at the Portland Art Museum. I ended up making 32 watermelons, all letterpressed with the word liberation underneath it. And these are all watercolor paintings, and these were 16 by 20. So also in my work, you know, I like to use numerology, like birthday numerology, and then just tell different stories using numbers and different things. So I really started painting watermelons at my time with my last employer, and thinking about just the consumption of Black content, the consumption of Black people, and throwing out the skin. So, you know, it's like my time with my last employer was like an anthropology project of consumption. So the first set of series were called self-portraits, because I was painting how I felt in those spaces and, you know, how I felt being consumed. This one I called Seeds, just as a reminder, like, you know, even being consumed, I always have seeds that get planted and new things come about. This was at the Portland Art Museum. I was just really honored to be next to R.V. Smith. And it's funny, the one on the, well, it's funny, it's like my left, but it might be your right. Oh no, it's on the left. He has a painting of a man eating watermelon, and yeah, to be in between his paintings, I was really proud. I also did a collaboration with the Portland Stamp Company for my show, All the Watermelons from Heaven, at Seder Projects. This is one of my favorites. It's actually hanging in my studio right now, the only painting that I did previously that I have up. So it's funny, I'm tapping into surrealism a lot more, which I'll get into a little later. And this one was for Bluest Eye, and for the quote, for 3 pennies, Pensacola had 9 orgasms with Mary Jane. So this was from my show, All the Watermelon from Heaven. This was my last show in Portland in last May. And I purposely wanted to call these watermelons things within history. So the round one is called Jim Crow Reckless Eyeballing, after the law that said if Black people looked at a white person wrong on the street, they could be imprisoned and punished. And the other one is called COINTELPRO, Messiah, Operation Messiah, and that was after COINTELPRO with Dr. King. And it was really cool. One time a class from another college came and, they asked about the names, and I'm like, okay, good. This is exactly what I wanted. So they was able to learn about the history as well. This one, it's funny. I actually really like this project. Carrie Mae Weems did a series of self-portraits where she dressed herself as these animals and was talking about the racism behind certain things with Mardi Gras. So I'm like, you know what? Like, I kind of want to play this role of this, this caricature. And I made the watermelon myself and got shot with a photographer here in Portland. So these are my watermelon bags. It's a bag that I made with my last show, or the Watermelon from Heaven, and at Sado Projects. Yeah, I was really proud of just like the tags and how everything came together. And I love product, and it was just a way of like continuing that story and bringing something home. This is one of my favorites. This one is called Negro Spirituals. This one is named after Bell Hooks' imperialistic, white supremacist, capitalistic patriarchy. And all of them had red, black, and green bows underneath them. I love publications. So I started doing these publications. I have like just a million pictures of watermelons, and I made like this board book. And just really playing around with the texture. I call this one I Want You More Than You Know, after Kendrick Lamar's song about desire, temptation. Still playing around with this idea of like how the Black body is just so desired and so packaged and eaten and consumed. This is my book, Watermelon Matrix, Flesh, Skin, and Seeds. And it was a collaboration with incredible creatives and incredible writers and culinaries in Portland. And that's a picture of us with my collaborators, Ruby Joy White, Akasha Lawrence Spence, Black Futures Farms, and Dominique. And we had a talk during Juneteenth, and it was just such a great time. So I am literally taking pictures of watermelons like wherever I go, like whether it's on the street, whether it's in the supermarket, like I'm always taking pictures of watermelons. So Cash for Negroes. I don't even know how to start with this one, to be honest. I mean, this is just so timely with Eric Adams. First off, Eric Adams knows he does not have the face card to do this. Secondly, my rent is too expensive for him to be taking the time to do this. But, here's our beloved Eric Adams. But, it really is experimental. I love playing around with typography and like just playing around with different things. And then just playing around with another font. So if you didn't know, Cash for Negroes, it was an ad for white people to purchase other African Americans. So I use it as satire, talking about, I'm trying to edit myself when I'm trying to say this. It's just a million exploitatives in my head. But with Black folks who chose cash over doing the right thing and showing up for their people, but still using their Blackness as a way of selling and being quote unquote culturally relevant. I mean, respectfully, if anyone still likes Lil Wayne, please come see me after. I don't know how people forgave him for that Beat the Pussy Up Like Emmett Till lyric. If you forgot it, I will always be here to remind you. I think he's trash. So So I did that for, I first wanted to do it for, sorry, I'm a little nervous. So I forgot his name, but the prosecutor with Breonna Taylor. That's when this idea first came to inception. Him right here. I don't know how I forgot his name, but yeah, that's him right here. And then Clarence Thomas. It's funny, Clarence Thomas actually used to be a Panther. Didn't know that. But, you know, people said he sold his soul, probably to his wife. They're just both very strange. And then these are some other ones: Candace Owens, Mark Robinson, and Kanye West. And I just hope we stop idolizing celebrities. It's funny. So Tiger Woods, who said he is not Black, is actually celebrating Black History Month with Trump along with Kodak Black. So there are, Jesus, I'm trying to edit myself, but there are a lot more coons to keep up with this project. And yeah, so there's a lot going on. But that just goes back to my favorite quote. Black visibility is not Black power. This comes from Black Power Politics. Sometimes people just throw a Black face and think like, oh, well, this is great for Black people. This is the representation. And, you know, it's not. It's absolutely not. So last but not least, this is one of my most recent projects after the election. So it's dual. I started researching Black women who killed the enslavers right after the election, from feeling a lot of despair and feeling hopeless and just really needing that reminder that, you know, Black women have always shown up. And then also I did this one after a conversation with a friend, and he said he did not vote for Kamala Harris because he felt like she code switches. And I'm just like, motherfucker, I had to code switch before. What are you talking about? And that's not a reason to not vote for her. And he's like, oh, well, you know, I'm fine. I got my gun. And I'm just like, are you Luigi Mangione? You're not. Like, what are you talking about? So just really thinking of this role, of this expectation that people expect Black women to play. And then after speaking with, like, you know, my professors and just like doing some soul searching, I realized this project of these advertisements with these like forced grins and Black women who killed the enslavers was honestly me like looking in a mirror. And it really made me want to dig deep into Du Bois' double consciousness and really explore it in my own. And if you don't know what double consciousness is, it first was coined from Du Bois and the Souls of Black Folks. And it talks about how Black people have to often operate with a consciousness of how the world views them and then a consciousness of how they view themselves. So this is an excerpt from a woman named Phyllis who killed her enslaver, John Codeman. There is this incredible book called Brooding Over Blood or Revenge from Dr. Nikki Taylor. My friend said I probably enjoy it because it's like a historical snapped. And it literally reads like a drama. Like there were Black women who like took their enslaver and like suffocating with him with a pillow and all these other things. And I think about these like racist, like white men who have been yelling at Black people and being like, well, I could have owned you or whatever. And I'm just like, I'm a Cancer. So sometimes I'm always like fantasizing arguments in my mind. And I'm just like, you know, if someone said that to me, I'm like, I will poison you and I will chop your wife up and throw her into the furnace. And that came from real points of history. And all these women did get executed at the end, but you know, most of them, it was the same thing. Like they first tried to burn down the house or they tried to take legal action. And at the end they used Black feminist justice and killed them. I mean, it's not that many. It's maybe around like 200. But a lot of the narrative is that like Black men were the only ones who were doing things like that, when Black women were also very active in it as well. So Phyllis specifically, poisoned her enslaver with rat basin and I think some other herb. So even thinking about women who killed the enslavers, and back to this mammy caricature, I'm reading this book called Slave in a Box and thinking about what the mammy archetype is. And they want to paint this mammy figure as a woman who is so loyal to her enslaver. And, she's always in the kitchen, and then she's a friend, and then she's this, and then she's that. And, that didn't really happen in history. So just really going back to why this mammy figure was created, or what it was within the white psyche to create these figures. Even more so, Black people and African American people were really skilled with plants, and skilled with knowing how to kill the enslavers. And most enslavers were really nervous with each bite that they took because they knew that could come to some sort of poisoning. So that kind of goes back to that double consciousness of like reality and caricature. So I have been collecting and just snapshotting all of these like mammy figures. Some of them come from Aunt Jemima. Some other ones come from this character from Uncle Tom's Cabin named Topsy, sheet music, all these different places. I thought I had a recent picture. I have a lot more. So I'm turning 35 this year. So I'm trying to get to 35, and right now I have 24. And then to represent the Black women who killed the enslavers, I'm making up these plants and thinking of these plants that could potentially kill. I mean, and none of these plants that I'm making up are real, but they're hybrids of orchids and other plants that exist, and thinking of them as this like personification or this embodiment of like these powerful plants. So I don't know what's happening yet. It's just like this idea that's brewing and that I've been working on. And I'm really excited. So I just have one last clip, and then we could do a quick Q&A.
People. I can't be a pessimist because I'm alive. To be a pessimist means that you have agreed that human life is an academic matter. So I'm forced to be an optimist. I'm forced to believe that we can survive whatever we must survive. But the Negro in this country, the future of the Negro in this country is precisely as bright or as dark as the future of the country. It is entirely up to the American people and our representatives. It is entirely up to the American people whether or not they're going to face and deal with and embrace this stranger whom they've maligned so long. What white people have to do is try to find out in their own hearts why it was necessary to have a nigger in the first place. Because I'm not a nigger, I'm a man. But if you think I'm a nigger, it means you need it. The question you've got to ask yourself, the white population of this country has got to ask itself, North and South, because it's one country, and for a Negro, there's no difference in the North and the South. There's just a difference in the way they castrate you. But the fact of the castration is the American fact. If I'm not the nigger here, and you invented him, you, the white people, invented him, and you got to find out why. And the future of the country depends on that, whether or not it's able to ask that question.
So this quote is my my last slide, and it's funny. I was thinking, I was like, there's probably some miserable old white man who might see me up here and be like, look at this DE&I. And I'm just like, they can burn in hell. And it's so, the complete and continuous like discrediting people, has been happening since the beginning of American time. And I don't know, when I was talking about this, we was trying to talk about hope, and I was just like, I don't know what hope is right now. That word sounds familiar. I don't fully have it. But I hope people start doing a lot of heart work. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I hope my work could go somewhere. It is time to get banned. It is time to really shake some heads, shake shit up. And we'll see. But removing this ownership of these images and this ownership of these people who have never done a thing in their life, I don't own that hatred. And honestly, I am afraid. I don't know what is going to happen, but it's time to work. So thank you.
We have time for a few questions if you want to raise your hand.
Hello. I just want to say, protect you at all costs.
Yeah.
I think that is such a profound space to take back a narrative.
Thank you.
But to live so boldly in a time where people are trying to look away. I think that I'm very excited to see the series with the smiles.
Thank you.
Just because of the fact that we have such nonverbal communication within our community. And I think that when we even talk about the code switching aspect of just the smile itself, I just think it's just, again, so brave and so proud of you. I don't know you as that personally, but I can feel that, it's the nonverbal.
Thank you.
But my question to you is, with all this that you're consuming, how do you protect yourself? How do you keep yourself grounded? And how do you, because I do think that as far as any art is, you're putting your soul out for everyone, but what tools have you learned, or are you still learning in order to protect your spirit?
Yeah. Well, first off, thank you for the kind words. Honestly, I don't fully know. I try to maintain I maintain a spiritual practice. And I don't know. Some days it's hard. Sometimes it's friends. Sometimes it's wine. Other days it's also wine. I don't know. But, I think I have a plan and purpose. And I think we all have something to give back with this crazy time. And one of the things that I heard someone say, the creator knew this was coming. And it's just well, what does that mean? So I don't fully know. It's something I'm working through, but I'm happy to feel fulfilled and purpose at this moment. And I'm kind of riding on that. I know when to back away. I watch a lot of true crime. I know that's not a way of backing away, but it is backing away from this space of seeing these images. So I don't know. It's something I'm consistently exploring, and it's something that just continuously evolves. So yeah.
I guess I just look at it more from the tool of propaganda and how it is used to.
Yeah, but the work is also healing. Learning about Aunt Jemima, of how she was created from white people, and seeing some of these same white people who are saying, oh, these DE&I hires or all these other things. I literally say that Toni Morrison quote almost every day of these people are deranged, leave me out of it. And it really, I'm able to approach the work with not a sense of ownership or even like feeling as triggered anymore, because I'm like, that has to do with the white imagination. I don't look like that. We don't talk like that. And I think it's just something very special to be so far removed from that. And it is painful, and I'm not saying like, you know, bring that type of imagery back, but I think that has more to say about the people who are saying these things than the images themselves. So, yeah.
You. Hi, Christine. Thank you for sharing and for just taking us on a journey of your body of work. You kind of touched on this, but I'm curious, being back in Portland, if you could just talk a little bit about how you feel being back here and how your work has maybe evolved, which again, your whole presentation was kind of about that. But I'm just curious, I suppose, in hindsight, if you can just talk a little bit again about your Portland experience and how it shaped your work a little bit more.
Yeah. I don't work there no more, so F it. I used to work at Nike, and talk about a minstrel shows. Like, you know, and I'm still very proud of getting to that space, but also like just learning. So, okay. You know what? Thank you for this question, because I'm in a minstrel and popular culture class, and like that image really freaks me out. And I told my teacher, I'm like, me taking a minstrel class is like a person being afraid of spiders and taking a spider class. Like it just like, it freaks me out. But learning about the difference between Black people who did minstrel performance in order to get into entertainment, and then also kind of elevate themselves or their practice, and other Black people in that space to get resources and their own capital, versus white people doing it in terms of saying this is a true Black experience and authenticity. You know, it's funny, there's so many examples of white people creating these like spaces of Black authenticity, of like, oh, this is how Black people talk, or like setting up like this fake plantation, hiring performers, and then people who would come review like the show or whatever was happening was like, wow, this is the true plantation. And it's just like, they're all paid actors. What are you talking about? So being in that corporate space, especially such a Black facing company, was really eye-opening. And it really just made me stay true to like my work and like how I felt in it and my experience with it. I can't even lie, like moving back to New York, I do miss the supermarkets here heavily. I'm trying to figure out how to put fish in my carry-on. But it's like to have that experience there and feel like never taken seriously or never appreciated leaving. Also, if anyone ever gets laid off, just go back to school. There's so many resources. Leaving and then coming back under this, especially when my plan was to, you know, grow there and try and climb the ladder. I'm not good with corporate politics by any means. So again, like coming back and like working with the students earlier in the workshop and being here, it feels so surreal. And I'm like, you know what? I'm a new person. I'm really a new person, and it feels great.
Other questions?
Cool.
Oh.
Apologies if you already answered this or maybe talked about it. When you take all of these pictures of watermelon now, like what is your thoughts? Like, what do you think of it? Like, is it for work? Is it like, do you feel a connection to it? I don't know, just that thought.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. It's kind of like a habit at this point. And that actually gives me a lot of joy. Like, I find a lot of joy in my work. But also, watermelon is a joyous fruit. Like, it tastes good. You know, it reminds me of, like, a summer barbecue. Like if you see watermelon in abundance in the store, it probably means like it's summer, it's warm out. Watermelon margaritas, like, it's such fun, and it was something that was muddy and used to try and present this like childlike, or again, some form of mockery. So with working in this practice and doing this research of the white imagination and some of the derangement in the stories, I feel so far removed from like those stories at this point. And when I'm taking it, it's just like, I hope people don't think I'm weird for just taking these pictures of these watermelon, but it never even comes across my mind that someone would think like, oh, she's a Black person taking a picture of a watermelon. I'd be ready for smoke, and smoke never comes to me. And I'm like, I'm always ready to answer that question if it does. But, D&I, spooky. So maybe it will. But, yeah. But also, it's a nice graphic. Like, I've painted watermelons that I've taken pictures of. I use it in books, just so many resources. The one on my website is one that I took in my kitchen. So it's also fun. Yeah. Oh.
I just thank you for your call to action and your continuous kind of work to change things.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I don't know. I really do not know what's going on these next 4 years. Like I'm terrified, but we all have a place, and it's just like figuring that out. I'm just like, yeah, how are we gonna make shit shake? Like, I'm so ready. I hope I'm on a banned list somewhere. I'm calling it. If you're not banned, are you really doing anything right? And actually, I had a friend who, who told me that I had a studio visit that didn't go well. Actually, the person was a little strange. And, I was just feeling like really down in the dumps. And my friend was talking, and he's so deep, and he was like, Christine, is everyone meant to get your work? Like, he's like, if everyone likes your work, that means like it's too easy. And you're not an easy person. And I'm like, you know what? I appreciate that. So like even seeing people talk about Kendrick's work, or I'm really inspired by Robert Colescott, and I'm obsessed with Kara Walker. I'm gonna meet her one day, and just like people, they were shunned and people didn't get it, but you know what? They're still here, and there's still a longevity with their practice. So I have a ton of Klan documents. I have all this stuff. Like, no one is going to be able to deny racism while I'm still here, while my stuff is still here. And yeah, I'm ready to make some shit shake. There's a lot of content, too much content. So thank you. Thank you for coming.
Oh.
Did you say your book was available on the website, or is there a way to see it?
Yeah, so it is on the website. Board books are really expensive, so I'm trying to figure out like how to do it or what to do it. I'm trying to make Cash for Negroes into a book. I don't know where that exists. I think it needs to exist somewhere to be like, I see you. But yeah, the publications are like definitely coming. But yeah, please just keep following, and when it happens, like, it's being worked on.
Well, thank you so much, Christine Miller.
Thank you.